Hello, everybody, and welcome to Making It. This is episode 113, and I'm just here alone today, so you're going to have to listen to me. I'm just kidding. I'm here with Dave Picciuto.
Hey, I'm here.
And Bob Clagett.
I'm here as well. Awesome. You're not on your own. Good job. Way to take over the intro.
Yeah, just having fun.
He did a great job, so now he has to do it every time from now on, right?
Yeah.
Oh, my God. I'm still sweating. I have flop sweat from... See how fast I went through that?
Jimmy emails us and says, "Hey, I'm quitting the podcast unless you guys let me take control. I want to host it. I want to run the show, and this is how it's going to be, or else I'm out of here." And so,
yeah,
here we are.
It's going to get posted in 10 Fridays.
David doesn't get to edit. He doesn't get to post the podcast anymore. It's like all Jimmy. All Jimmy.
Oh, my God.
So send your complaints to Jimmy Diresta at... Just kidding.
All right, so guys, what are we working on?
I have not started any new projects yet, but I will tomorrow. When it comes over, I'm going to do some Glowforge stuff. I'm going to experiment with that again. And I think we're going to do...
Can you tell us what?
Yeah, I think we're going to redo the air freshener video.
Oh, nice.
And if there's time, those should be some pretty quick videos. So if there's time, I might do a couple little shop projects and just film those as well, so I can kind of scatter those releases out throughout the next couple weeks.
Sweet.
Hey, can I ask a question? Are you allowed to make any tree, or is it just tree and the word air freshener? Those things combined together, is that trademark?
You know, I would have to contact my lawyer to answer that question, and I don't want to because my lawyer charges me by the hour. So I'm not going to make any tree. I'm just going to make a smelly something or other. Yeah.
Right on. That's funny.
Smelly something or other.
Yeah. Maybe it'll be a foot.
There you go.
That's
Nice.
funny.
Yeah.
Well, for me, let's see. I'm working on a different thing for next week right now, which is a pain because I hate painting and I'm doing a lot of painting. But for this week, I'm putting out the thing you asked about last week.
Ooh, yes.
Behind me here, it's a large scoreboard, and so
that's cool.
It's about like 3 feet wide, maybe 18 inches tall, and it's a scoreboard and it's Bluetooth controlled, so you can pull out your phone, change the score between two teams.
Get out of here.
Yeah, no,
for real?
I'm not gonna get out of here. This is my podcast too. yeah, for real.
That's amazing.
Yeah, so it's actually really easy to put together. All the little they're big light things for each one of the bulbs is 3D printed. So I had to print 60 of these little black cups and a clear diffuser to put on the front of them, and they all have an LED from the back. And so, yeah, it turned out pretty cool. I mean, like the actual execution of it could have been better. Like I could have spent more time on paint and all the stuff that I always could spend more time on that I don't really care about. But getting it to work in a relatively short amount of time was pretty cool.
What are you using for the app?
I found... I'll see if I can remember what it's called. It's just a free one on the App Store, and it's called BLE... because it's Bluetooth, so low energy. BLE 101, and it's made to work exactly with the Arduino board that I'm using. And it's... excuse me, it's a really general Bluetooth app, so the controls on it are just like buttons, and you can't name them, or you can't, customize a lot about it. But if you wanted to, you could write a really simple custom app to do the same thing. If you wanted to actually have team names and stuff like that. I just went for kind of the lowest common denominator to make it work, so more people would be able to get it up and running. Because the whole idea with it was, it's a relatively big but simple, so you could have, if you had a large classroom or even a gymnasium, this thing's big enough that you could see it at a distance. And then you can, obviously control it from like across the gym, which is pretty cool. So,
or you could hack it as a student, right? With your own phone?
Yeah. Yes, you could. There's no security built into it at all. So, yes, you could. But, proof of concept. So, Jimmy just liked a really interesting video on Twitter. I just saw the name of it pop up. So.
Oh, right on. That's funny. I accidentally hit play on that. That was the noise you heard a second ago. I'll explain that when I tell you what I was been up to. But the scoreboard you made, it's very reminiscent of my high school scoreboard that was probably made in the 1960s or 70s. I mean, by now I'm sure it's different, but it's a grid of LEDs that create the number in several shapes. Yeah. So it must look really nice in dusk. Does it look good in the daytime? Of course, at nighttime it probably looks great, but in the daytime, is it bright enough?
It looks okay. Yeah, it looks okay in bright light, but it definitely looks better when it's... Whoa. My Amazon thing just beeped at me. I guess I said her name. It looks the best when the lights are off. And at a distance, that's helpful. Right. Yeah, but in like a really bright light, you can see it.
Same with me. I look best with the lights off and at a distance. I'm sorry.
Good point.
Go ahead.
Me too.
Yeah. But so what's interesting is that when I was looking up some kind of examples of scoreboards, I looked at the ones like you're talking about, like the old big ones with the big round bulbs, and that's kind of what I modeled it after. And originally, I had thought about doing a 7-segment display. So where, like your alarm clock, where you have a number that's made out of lines. So there's 7 lines that make up the number, and then you light those up. And I thought down that path a little bit, and I thought, it's like, I could probably figure it out, but I think it would be cooler and older looking to make the ones with big bulbs. So it's a grid of bulbs instead. Well, so I finished this video like 2 weeks ago, and it's been out for sponsor approval and all this stuff, and I've had it done. It's just been sitting there. And in that 2 weeks, John Park from Adafruit, you guys probably have seen him.
John from Maker Faire.
Yeah. He put up a video about making a giant 7-segment display for a Ninja Warrior course timer, and it's super cool. Like, it's funny though, because I thought about making those numbers in the same way that he ended up making them, but I just decided to go a different path. So as soon as I saw his video, I was like messaging him like, "Oh man, that's so cool! I thought the same thing."
But
anyway, his turned out really, really cool. And his are all like laser cut acrylic, so he's got, layered where the cutouts are, the diffusers are one level, and then he has like a black grid on top of them. And it turned out really cool. I'll put that in the notes because it's a good video.
And that reminds me,
I'm done.
During Maker Faire, you guys weren't you guys in New York? I can't even remember anymore. It's one big blur.
Nope.
During New York Maker Faire, Laura Comp came and she gave Jocko a gift. And it was a grid of these little tiny these little, like when you see a European train station and the times change and all those little things flicker. And it's a little thing that flips from one color to black. Typically.
She gave me one of those
a
long time ago.
Yeah, she bought a bunch of them from a flea market or something. And we were all playing with it. And like you hold it one way and it all turns yellow when you flip back. So each one has its little diode or whatever that makes it flip. And I always thought that those were amazing and also very mysterious. I have no idea how they work. So that's a third version of making numbers, like yours, John's, and then that's a third one I'm thinking of.
Yeah. And it's really interesting. The one that she gave me still had the connector on the end of it, because there's tons of wires that come out of the back of it, for whatever control it takes. And I was really surprised at how complex and how big the connector was that it hooked into. I don't even know what it hooked into, some crazy computer. But the connector was like a good maybe 2.5, 3 inches long and like half an inch thick. And there were, probably 100 wires going into the back of the thing. It's crazy for just a few characters worth of numbers.
Yeah. Yep, and like anything, the smaller the pixels are, the more in focus you can get that number up close.
Right.
And the ones we're talking about are like the little tiny little flip dots, and yours are bigger, and then the John Park ones are just straight lines. So, what have I been up to? This weekend, I was invited. Now, I don't know if it's kind of outside of our realm, but it's not really outside of our realm. There's the All Me channel. You guys know the All Me channel?
Oh, yeah.
I think so.
Yeah, the All Me channel, I think it's owned by Google. It's started by Google. And then they have episodic TV shows on there. It's not really episodic in the way that, it's not scripted. But it's a show. They have all different shows on there. And one of the shows is Reforged, I think is the name of the show. And the guys make swords that come out of video games. And you've seen it. It's flashed all over YouTube. I mean, there's little bits and pieces of it everywhere. Well, the guys that run it are Baltimore Knife and Sword. They're the guys that are on the show. And one of the brothers, it's a family business, and one of the brothers who's not on the show is a fan of mine and ours, and Emery is his name. Emery, thank you. Some of he's probably listening. Emery called me or contacted me and invited me out to their Hammer-In, where they all get together and just work on the forge. And so me and Brett's my new shop hangout, drove down to Baltimore this weekend, and we spent 2 days at the Baltimore Knife and Sword Works, and got some proper instruction on how to blacksmith, stuff that I've never done before, things I've never done and learned about. And so the very first day, I just literally hung out and listened to and didn't say a word. I just watched and videotaped and just watched guys working as much. I was probably the least experienced guy there as far as forging goes. But I just listened and learned. And then at the end of day one, when it wasn't as crowded, because a couple of guys went out to eat, I started working on a piece of metal. And that's going to be a new video for me. I started working on this knife. And what I'm about to say kind of pertains to a little bit about what we're going to talk about. A couple of weeks ago, I made a crisp blade, a wavy blade, and everyone's like, yeah, let me see you hammer that out. Let me see you hammer that. Yeah, anybody can grind it, but it's like any complicated thing you make, there's always going to be somebody that says, yeah, that's not, let me see you do it without electric. Let me see you do it. So this,
eyes closed.
This crisp blade, a lot of people's like, oh, it's not really considered a knife unless you hammer it, which I don't really understand, but so just as a matter of just curiosity, I hammered out a crisp blade, and it's not as complicated as the ones I've ground out, but I definitely learned a tremendous amount just hammering this simple wavy blade, which will be in the video. And so I was just working on that a little bit today. We're back in New York, and so I was working on that a little bit this morning because you hammer it out, you get about 80% there, and then you got to kind of grind to the very finish. Whereas I started with a blank in my other video, just a big, basically reductive. This is kind of you sculpt it out of like a lump. Not necessarily a lump. It was a long rod that I hammered into a very long, thin rod and then put the wave in it, then tapered it. So I learned a lot. And I just took advantage of being there with these guys that know so much. I asked a lot of questions. There was a lot of talking about YouTube business and stuff. And I met a bunch of people, including the girl Ellen, who I just liked her video. She does fashion with steel. She's pretty amazing. Does pretty amazing work. And yeah, so I did that. And so that's something, when I'm there, I got a much clearer idea of how I'm going to set up my own personal forging location. And these guys have stuff, everything's just outside. I was always like under the assumption I got to kind of do it indoors. So that alleviated a lot of like my preconceived notions that I have to have everything inside because it's metal and it rusts, but it rusts and it doesn't seem to matter for most of this stuff. Because when you hammer it on it, it just gets smooth again anyway. So I'm looking forward now to setting up my shop because now I have a very clear vision where before I didn't. So I know where my blacksmith area is going to be upstate. And once it's set up, I definitely am sure I will get into making more and more stuff with the blacksmithing techniques that I'm learning.
So what is so far, I mean, I know you're kind of just rolling into it, but what's like the biggest new part of that versus all the stuff that you've done before?
Learning how to manipulate the metal under the head of a hammer and knowing like when you hit it, where it's going to go and manipulating it so that, the one thing that has always happened to me is like when you hammer the end of a piece of metal, it's fish mouths. You hammer it and then it turns into two long pointy things that come back onto themselves and controlling the metal so that it doesn't do that. And so it's like basically squishing clay, but really difficult way of squishing clay. So you have to hit it with the hammer. And knowing that if you hit it here, where it's going to squish over there. And basically, and using the top of the anvil, I learned a lot of this from watching Rory May, Dirty Smith, knowing where to hit the hammer on the metal in conjunction with the edge of the anvil and how to utilize that to your advantage. And it's funny because a lot of the stuff I learned from watching Rory, I never really put into practice. And then when I was there with a proper forge that gets the metal to the proper heat, and there's proper hammers and there's proper space to do it, with me, I got to like drag an anvil out, set my forge up, which I don't always have set up. And so, all these little things just hinder your experience. But when you're in somebody else's shop that's completely devoted to doing this, you can just like dig right in and just say, okay, let me figure this out and not have to worry about, burning a chicken or, dropping the hammer on my dog or my cat. And
that's always a worry for me. Burning the chickens, man.
Burning a live chicken.
Like spray painting the chickens. They're
And so it was, I just kind of, and like I said, the first several hours I just listened and watched. I did not touch anything because I didn't want to be presumptuous and think I knew exactly what I was doing. And by watching these guys, Damascus is another big thing. Multi-layers of metal, and it's sort of the holy grail of this business. And everybody is trying to make Damascus. All the other students were there, mixing up and making Damascus. There was somebody showing off samurai swords, and I was like, "How old is that?" He goes, "So this is 400 years old." Like this, like we're in a picnic area, hanging out in this guy's backyard, and they're like, "We'll look at." I go, "So that's 400 years old? That could have like maybe 20 or 30, dead bodies on that sword." He goes, "Who knows? It was like a shogun samurai sword from Japan." And
dang.
It's a few $1,000s, and they were just showing and trading antiques. Somebody was offering them for sale, but I don't think anybody bought them. But everybody knew the business of samurai swords, So I just kept my mouth shut and listened, and I learned a lot.
So the Damascus thing that's the process of the folding the metal over. Is that what that is, or am I wrong there?
Damascus is multiple layers of metal that you hammer them all together, and they become forge welded from the heat by banging them together.
Oh,
and then they basically start to swirl together, so you get a marbleization because the different metals will react differently. So you use different types of metals layered together. It's like if you took like a layer cake and you squished it all up, and the strawberry and then the cake and all the different stuff doesn't actually melt together. It all stays. So instead of straight lines, you have squiggly lines everywhere.
I always found that it doesn't photograph well, but when you see it in person, it's absolutely beautiful.
That's true. The knife that I made the other day in the cane is a piece of Damascus that was given to me by one of our friends at the Atlanta show last year. And it's a piece of Damascus. And in the middle of the video, I etch it so you could see like the different types of metal kind of show up in a different tone of black or silver. And by the end of the video, I polished it a couple times, so it really diminished that look. And then I got some pointers from the guys yesterday on how to make that a little bit more prominent again, just by leaving it in the acid bath much longer. They said like very long. In the beginning, I thought you just had to wipe it on, so that's why it was a little bit shallow. But you could make it so the different types of metal will etch deeper and deeper, so you actually could feel with your fingernail the different layers and the swirls. And how
does that affect the sharpness, like at the point, at the finest?
Oh, that's a good question, because you use all metals that are knife making metals. And, so they all have various levels of hardness in the stratosphere of being hard enough to make a knife. And so that's how they react differently. I didn't know that. I always wondered, I always thought you always had to have like a soft metal in there. But this weekend I learned that, no, you could just use all hard metals, but different types of hard metals with different carbon, different amounts of carbon in them. And so now finally these numbers are starting to mean something to me, like 1084 and 1095. And I'm learning a little bit. I mean, I wouldn't pass the test, but it's starting to become a little bit more clear to me. When like when any kind of new industry, when people just start dropping numbers, you have no idea what they're talking about. You go, yeah, man, that's cool. Pretend like and then you go away and you like quickly Google. I'm going to go to the bathroom. And you Google what does that mean?
Yeah,
happens at Maker Faire all the time.
Yeah,
I'm always running to the bathroom so I don't look stupid. But it was an experience.
About metal stuff, David.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Sorry. I know you, like, a while back you said that you were going to kind of put off metalworking stuff, and now that it's starting to get warmer outside, is that one of the triggers that's going to get you interested in doing metalworking, like welding and stuff, or is it more space and location?
I have like 18, 19 excuses on why I'm not doing more metalworking. So the quick short story is, and we discussed this last night in the live hangout that I did, but I cleaned out my garage to make room and space to do welding. My brother came over, he showed me what's up, gave me some scrap metal to play with, and then over the course of a year, the garage turned into a huge mess again. And so right now, if it would be a danger to the garage right now, so I have to go clean out the garage. It won't be that big of a deal, but I should be getting back into it. I have no real excuses. The weather's turning nice again. I just got to do it. I need to come up with a project that forces me to do it.
Right.
Yeah. Jimmy, you want to come up with a project for him? We can brainstorm real quick.
Hit me.
Yeah.
We can back him into a corner.
No, you just make a simple box. Just, make a simple frame, or just make a little, like a series of table legs that you put a piece of wood on. A frame with 4 tape. That's all.
That's definitely one of the thoughts that I have is as I'm drawing up images for my desk that I want to build, it's going to be a corner desk. I thought, what if, and the parts of the desk are going to be very modular, so you can like remove parts of it to replace it again, because it's going to be very specific to like the phone that I have and the tablet that I have, so it all kind of fits in together. But I thought about making just metal tubular legs and then just welding the plates on top and maybe some sort of feet on the bottom, which could be in theory to me sounds really simple, and if I mess it up, it's an easy fix or not very noticeable.
You could basically make exactly what you did with the aluminum solder legs that you had a couple years ago.
Yeah,
you can make
yeah,
exactly that, just with the same size steel. So you kind of have the familiarity of like the way those were attaching. I mean,
That's
as a basis.
really good idea. No, that's a really good idea.
Thank you.
All right, I have something to do now.
All right, we're done here.
We're done here.
Yeah, bye. See you guys next week. So, like what you were talking about, making the tubular legs and putting feet on them. A really simple way to do that, so that they're adjustable, is just to drill a hole in the bottom plate and then weld on a nut. And then your feet have a bolt in them, and you can just screw them straight up into that nut. And that's, I mean, I'm sure Jimmy's done that a million times. I've never actually done it, but I know that that's a very quick and easy way to make an adjustable height steel leg.
And there's a trick to doing that. Make sure you keep your bolt inside the nut, and just tack it and tack it and check and tack it and check and tack it and check. Don't just blast it with weld and then expect the screw to unscrew, because you're going to fuse the weld. You're going to fuse it. If everything's like bright red and you're like, wow, that's going to work, and then a second later you go to unscrew the bolt and it just snaps off, stays stuck in there. Ask me how I know.
Yeah. Good tip.
How do you know, Jimmy?
Because I've done it 50 times.
Gotcha.
So we're going to talk about a couple things today. One topic that a couple of people asked us to talk about, which pertains to my recent video, and then we're going to take some questions from Twitter. But a lot of people, in my recent video where I did my plasma table, you guys see that where I made that candle cage? I called it a candle cage.
Yeah,
and
I watched it today.
Yep, when the tech was at the shop and he was helping me, Matt from Torchmade, I said, you know what, while you're here, I want to try and bang out a little quick video, just to the beginning of the video. Because the minute he leaves is the minute the machine's not going to work, and it almost actually happened. So I was like, while you're here, let me at least cut all the parts I need to finish this video, so at least it goes smooth while you're here. He's in the video for a split second, you see. And I cut all those parts.
Can I ask a question real quick?
Yeah.
The pattern. Did you design that in Illustrator, like on the fly while he was there, or is that like a preset thing that's in the machine?
I did it on the fly. I wish I would have filmed it, because we were just playing on the computer. He was showing me how to program some of the G code, and I went to Google image search. I Googled pattern, and a bunch of patterns showed up, and that was one of the patterns. It was on a piece of fabric. I did a screen grab, brought it into Illustrator. I did a make and expand trace, and I got vectors. All the black became the vectors. It was a pattern on a piece of fabric, and cool. And that became my pattern for that cutout. And in upcoming videos where I'm going to be lazy and use my CNC machine, I'm going to be really lazy and use my computer to do the drawing. So I'm going to show how lazy I can actually be and how much I've changed. I'm going to actually do the drawing on my computer, laying down with like the computer in a rack, like right in front of my face. Yeah, I've changed. So that's what we're going to talk a little bit about today, is how bad I've changed and how horrible things are now for everybody who watch me.
This show's all about Jimmy.
That's right.
No, we're talking about change and how every one of us changes constantly. And I made the joke because Raina is my friend that's been on a couple of my podcasts. Raina's 15. Today is her birthday, so happy birthday, Raina. And she has had her YouTube channel since she was like 13. I forgot to mention that in the podcast, but in my vlog. But could you imagine if we all have had a YouTube channel since we were 13, and now we're all like almost 40, 50, and we've had that much time behind us? How many times people would say you're changing, and like all those people that are complaining about you changing are also changing in their own way, or not, but you can't help but change when 5 years goes by, And so just the idea of, like somebody said to me, you're not like you used to be. I'm like, yeah, I'm not at all like I used to be, because I used to make one video every 2 weeks in between working for clients and slinging plywood and trying to keep people happy that have absolutely nothing to do with my YouTube channel. And as my YouTube channel started to evolve into my real job or my full-time job, I'm extremely happy now. I don't have to deal with clients. I don't have to take jobs that are going to inhibit my creativity, or the jobs that I take just for the money. Someone's like, can you fix my floor in my bar? I don't want to do that. But if I need a couple $1,000s, I'll do it. But that would be on my last priority of things that I would do. And now I don't have to do those kind of jobs. And I can, instead of spending hours in somebody's bar where there's a hole in the floor, trying to patch a hole in the floor, I could make a video about making a candle cage, with my new machine. that people just throw these expensive machines at me because I've changed. And I'm changing because I'm wanting to learn how to do all this new technology. So here I went from changing into learning how to use a CNC machine. This weekend I spent learning how to do actually the oldest craft in the whole entire world. So what happens when I do blacksmithing in the next couple of weeks? And people are going to say, oh, you've changed back, I think. Like what? It's like you look at all... You've changed back. I guess that's good. I'm not sure. So, of course, I'm going to use CNC and blacksmithing in the same video to really get everybody annoyed. But the idea is you got to look at like a career. You know, you can't look at life through like a paper tube. You got to look at the whole thing. And I find that some people that complain about us changing as YouTubers are looking at our lives through like a cardboard tube. You know what I mean when I say that? It's like you basically put your blinders on. And, you know, when people look at a project like that or look at a life or a career like that, it drives me crazy because every one of us has moments where we're not going to please ourselves or the people that watch us or, you know, the people we work for or the people we live with. But when you step back and look at the whole thing, I learned that years ago, and I always remember in my mind, I was doing for the very first time ever in my life, I was doing what's called a monthly retainer with a company. And I was nervous that they were going to feel like they're overpaying me and getting less work. And the guy who hired me, it was his idea. He goes, look, why don't we just put you on a monthly retainer? And like every day I felt like I had to spend some time on their work. I was being like overly cautious that they weren't feeling satisfied. And I had a conversation with him. He goes, well, look at this whole thing month to month. Because if you come up with one thing that takes you 3 minutes and it makes us hundreds of thousands of dollars, he goes, it was money well spent. So he goes, don't panic. Because it was all about developing products. And he goes, let's just look at it, you know, every month. We'll evaluate it every month, every 6 months. He goes, so don't be so uptight about this. And that's really how I look at my life and my YouTube channel and other people's YouTube channels. Like if somebody has a hiccup and does some video or some project that seems like, you know, it doesn't satisfy my personal needs, I would never say anything because the following week they're going to come up with something that's going to be like, oh, wow, that's so cool.
Yeah.
So that's why I say you can't look at life through a paper tube. So I'll catch my breath and stop talking.
Well, you referenced, you know, is your career. Not everybody has the luxury of just changing their career. So I'm gonna take it back and we'll talk about hobbies. And hobbies will change over the course of time. Like my stepdad used to be a big fisherman and used to play acoustic guitar. Now he has other hobbies where he does these metal sculptures because he no longer gets the satisfaction out of fishing or playing guitar, and he's just naturally evolved into something else. For me, I've had many changes in my career. I've been able to turn my hobbies into change, and I'm very fortunate and lucky to be in this position. But it's and change is pretty important for my career because if I stick with the same thing, I'm going to get surpassed by everybody else, and I'm going to get lost in the weeds on YouTube. So I'm always trying to do something different. I'm naturally trying to change and do these little things, and I'm also trying to incorporate all my past hobbies that I used to love into what I'm doing now. And I went to school for graphic design, and so I'm starting to get back into that, and I'm able to use my new laser and CNC machines with that old skill of graphic design and incorporate it into making the videos that I do now.
Yeah.
So, like, for me, it's kind of along the same thing, where you've had a bunch of different things, and one has led to the other, and one has led to the other, you know, and you've jumped from hobby to hobby. For me, like, moving from thing to thing has always been me. Since I was a kid, like, I never spent too long on one thing. I would do it to where I got like decent at it, or I got, you know, a certain level of accomplishment, and I was like, okay, what's the thing that this connects to? What's the next, not entirely different, you know, went from ballet to soccer or something, but like if I played soccer, well, what's the other sport that's closest to soccer that I could try, you know, share some stuff that I can move into that and move into this thing, move into that. So for me, it's I guess it's natural. It's not changing to change all the time. Does that make sense? It's natural. My natural progression is to always be looking at the next thing, is to be grabbing the next skill that's kind of remotely attached to the thing that I'm doing today. Yeah. And, you know, I want to learn, and I think both of you guys are the same way. I want to learn as much stuff as I can possibly learn. And the only way that you can learn new things is to be changing in what you're focusing on, changing what your hands are doing, changing, where you are and where you're putting your time and your money and all that stuff to be able to learn new stuff all the time. And if that's seen as a negative for somebody, then that person and myself have a very different focus on like what's important to us. And that's perfectly fine, I was thinking about this because it's kind of tangentially related. Before you mentioned the change thing, I put up a video last week about it was a prop for a video game company that a friend of mine works for. And it was a foam headpiece, right? Not something I'm personally very interested in, the piece itself, but it's a material that I still don't have a lot of experience with. I wanted a reason to do more of that material, play with it some more, understand it a little bit better. And my friend needed a thing for his company. Great. Sounds like a good idea. I had more than one comment on that said, "Hi, I'm Bob, and I'm out of ideas." I was like... And so the thing that was interesting to me was that I didn't exactly know why they said I was out of ideas. Was it because I did another foam project? Because I've done foam in the past. And if that's the case, does that mean I can only do one project in a material ever?
Right.
That's a bummer. Is it because I was doing something for somebody else? I don't know what the answer is. But it was really interesting, whereas I look at that project as a way to learn or, become better at something. Somebody else saw it as me being out of an idea. And I don't need to justify that to them. I don't really care. But I thought it was really interesting because you're saying... what people have said to you is, you're changing. You're not doing the same thing that you used to do. And somebody to me is going, you're doing the same thing that you did that last time. Why don't you change? It's like, it's the same thing in opposite directions. Right. But the thing that really got me thinking about this, or the thing that I think maybe kind of explains it, is TV. So this may be a stretch, but think about your TV show the shows that you were on, Jimmy.
Yep.
Those were formulaic. They had every episode, you could probably stack them on top of each other. They would have about the same length intro, the same
grid,
length setup,
same exact grid,
the same grid, right? Every single time. And every TV show is that way, except for like maybe some of the new really hip, whatever, But any DIY, HGTV, Food Network, those shows, they have a grid. They overlay the content on that grid, and it fits every single time. And even if the conversations and the drama and stuff switch, there's a beat pattern that everybody's used to when they watch those things. And so when I think people are used to watching that, and then they come to YouTube and they see one of our videos, the first video, they go, oh, here's the beat. I get it. Jimmy's going to go fast forward. He's going to make a knife. He's going to cut a thing. He's going to use the grinder. There's going to be sparks. And then
I'm going to shave my arm.
And then you shave your arm, and then at the end there's going to be like the little wipe where it closes out the thing. Whatever the beat is, right? They see one, they expect that's the beat. Then when they see another one where you're doing something entirely different, hey, you're at a farm, there's chickens everywhere. What's going on? That's not the beat that I was expecting. You've changed because you're not following this pattern that I assume you have to follow because that's what media does. You know what I mean?
Good point. Yeah.
So I see that a lot because I see it in myself when I watch TV. When you expect a show to be a certain way and then, this one has a different beat than the last one did, then you're like taken off a little bit, So anyway, I think people are doing that to us just because that's what they're used to. And they don't necessarily expect the fact that we are individual people creating new things on a regular basis. And those creations are going to take the form of like the mood that we're in, the setting that we're in, wherever our interests are. I mean, I think for us, all of the personal stuff and all of the interests and the surroundings all feed into what we're doing at any given moment. A TV show is a crew of 10, 100 people all having to work together in some sort of a capacity to make a thing that's publishable. And so there has to be a system in place. There has to be a grid for that to work. Anyway, I think I don't know if that's a right observation of what's going on, but it makes sense to me.
Again, can we address the fact that we are not complaining about the complainers? We're just...
Oh, yeah, not at all.
And those people are very, very few. Like most of the people enjoy and come along for the journey, but it's just... I love changing. That is not gonna change. Is the fact that I love changing. And so I'm looking forward to doing the next thing. And maybe one day I'm going to be a professional welder. Who knows?
Nice. Yeah, I think that's a good point to say we're not complaining about the complaints. This isn't a whine fest. I really love to try to understand why people say things and why people feel things.
Yep.
And that helps. I think it's a good skill to have, like in just personal relationship. If you get a better understanding of why somebody says the things that they say, then you have a little better picture of who they are. And so it's really interesting for me in comments to try to figure out, like, where did that come from? Like, what was the expectation? Not that I have to try to meet it, but what was the expectation? How did that get in place? Stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
One of the comments, and it's there to read. If I haven't checked to see if he commented back, but one of the guys says, I'm a subscriber, but I don't watch anymore because you've changed, and I don't need to see all the CNC stuff and all this other stuff. It's not real making to me. And of course, we can do a whole episode on really what it takes to set up a CNC machine and the mental capacity that it takes to just click that button. Because you don't just think of it, and the machine doesn't read your mind, and the machine doesn't just go, oh, I think I know what you want. Is this what you want? And you're like, oh, that's perfect. I didn't have to do anything. I could lay in bed.
What was the title of that video?
Which one? The one that I'm talking about?
Yeah, mindmade versus handmade?
Oh, handmade versus mindmade, yeah.
Yeah.
Because I said, well, I made it with my mind, so does that mean it's not valid, right? I mean, of course, I did a lot of handwork in it, and my fingers touched the keys as my brain made the decision to move the pattern around on the screen, and I decided exactly where the vectors were going to be cut, just like I would have if I was using a hand jeweler's saw. So that's why I kind of brought up also that argument of handmade versus mindmade. But as far as changing goes, I said to the person, and I think I kind of alluded to it already in this conversation, but to clarify, I said, in the beginning, I was at a point where I was working all the time to just make my ends meet. And at that time, I constantly dreamed of having a machine that would do these type of things. And I dreamed of, and then never ever thinking I would ever get a plasma cutter, for instance, or a milling machine, or a lathe, or a CNC machine. All these things are like, those belong to rich people, and those belong to people that I'll never be able to get access to. And now I have access to all those things. So I've changed into these like fantasies that I've always had. So yeah, I've changed. I've worked hard, and I got to a point where people are willing to let me experiment with their machines because they see how much I like to experiment, even if it's a razor blade and glue and tape, I experiment. And if someone gives me a $10,000 machine to experiment with, like, I'm so happy I changed in that direction because now I can experiment with it. And the person who has the money, who doesn't really know much about that machine, will see, oh, look at this guy's getting to play and experiment. It's like getting to drive a race car all the time and experiment. It's like, being like the guy in Top Gear, but instead it's machines. And it's just super exciting because 3 years ago, I never believed that I could get to this point where they would deliver this giant machine to me and say, oh, here it is, have fun, play with it. And so for me, change is good. And I hope that the fans and the people on a big scale, and I think it's true, see that and they also get inspired and get outside their comfort zone. So, we get to explore these things so that more people will say, oh, wow, look what he's done with that. That's exactly the vision I want. You know what? Let's figure out how to get our hands on one of those, or at least access to a makerspace that has one of those.
Or even, how can I do that with what I have, right?
Right.
To
exactly.
spark that creativity in them, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It might be, you were mentioned earlier, kind of, I think as a joke, about doing an episode on setting up digital tools or CNC, but that actually might be a really interesting, well, I don't know if it'd be interesting, but I think it would be an interesting walkthrough of take one simple CNC project and talk through, maybe even 3D printing as well, talk through all of the potential setups, all the failures that could happen, all the stuff that you have to look out for. Because I think if somebody doesn't have any experience with those tools, they may see it as push button digital fabrication. Yes, I want to make a model of this thing, so I'm just going to go into 360 Fusion and model it real quick. They don't think about the fact that that's like 50 hours of modeling face in the monitor, making it work right. So that might be interesting, just to give some perspective on some of that. Maybe not. I don't know. Yeah. You guys let us know on Twitter if you think that would be worthwhile.
Yep.
So another thing I was thinking about here with change in general is, and this is, again, not one of those you're right or wrong things. It's a personality thing entirely. But from my perspective, every situation that I'm in, every conversation I'm in, every relationship I have with people, they all inform to some degree who I am. Like, they give me a better understanding of a person or of a place or of a skill set that I don't have or whatever. You know, anytime you're in a thing, you absorb some of the stuff around you. And if you're not interested in absorbing stuff, then you shouldn't put yourself into different situations. You should stay in the place that's comfortable for you, where you get what you think you need, and just stay there. And if that's what makes you okay, go for it. For me, I'm far more interested in gathering information about people and about what makes things work, and gathering skills and all that stuff. And the only way that I can do that is to put myself in different situations all the time, is to be able to meet new people, spend time with them, get to know them, not just meet them. It's to try things that I've never tried before in the shop and otherwise. And that's just a goal of mine, is to experience as much of this all as I possibly can. And I can't do that if I'm doing the same thing over and over and over. Now, granted, nobody told me that they were worried about me changing, so I'm not speaking for you, Jimmy. But for me personally, that would be, if somebody said I had changed, that would be one of the biggest compliments they could give me, even if it wasn't intentional.
I like that.
Because that's an absolute goal of mine, to grow and to change and to gather, as much as I possibly can. And that's what I have to say about that.
Yeah, yes. It's funny. Yeah. I'm sitting here trying to think, has there been an example? I guess the biggest example would be, for instance, Casey Neistat, right? When he started vlogging every day, everyone seems to know his story for the most part. He had 500,000 subscribers. And now he's flying in helicopters. He probably has all the money he's ever going to need. He works for CNN now somehow. He's developing all this stuff. Yeah, he's changed. And I think it's such an exciting ride to watch him change. Now, you know what I'm saying? Like, that's the biggest example I could think of. But I've never watched a YouTuber who's changed nearly as much as him, or even a fraction of what he's changed, and said, they're changing. I want to see the same exact thing I saw the first day I found this video channel. Or even television shows. Like, think of, Monster Garage or any other show. On TV, they'll change to the point where the network's just going to turn them off, and they'll go away, and you have no idea where or what happened. But in YouTube, where we live our lives in public, for the most part, or some part of it alive, people get a chance to see. But, I mean, I don't really have like a specific point. The idea is that when people change in the public's eye, it's a good thing. I mean, unless they go backwards, and then you're like, wait, you're changing. You need help, you need therapy because something bad is happening. But if you're evolving in your craft, if it's filmmaking or if it's jet setting, whatever it is, and you get to go do bigger and more better places, I don't know, bigger, better, more machines, bigger, better, more technology. Like I said, I mean, last week I was playing with a CNC machine. Yesterday I was like heating metal in a fire and hitting it with a hammer. So it's not like I'm going to go from a CNC machine into a rocket ship into space. You know what I mean? It's like I'm going all over the place. So
that would be awesome, though.
So when somebody says you've changed, they're watching me through a paper tube. One of the comments I said, yeah. And if there was a maker robot suit available where I could just sit in the thing and use my mind and my eyeballs to control the thing, you better believe if someone gives me one, I'm going to be riding it and playing with it. I'm going to be making things with robot hands. Because that is cool.
Yeah. Well, for me, I don't know what the difference between change is and taking a risk. So,
yeah.
I'm taking a risk, and if you don't take that risk, you're going to miss out on so many opportunities, and you're going to miss out on many other possible paths that you can take, happiness, fulfillment, and all that. And I am where I am in my happiness because I've taken so many risks. I've made so many changes.
Yeah, I agree. Let's flip this over real quick, because I don't want this to be framed for people listening as like, changing means getting new tools, and changing means going to digital tools. That's not at all. I think that what's spawned the conversation on YouTube. But I think it's equally as marked as change. Let's take a hand tool woodworker. Hand tool woodworker cuts his first dovetail. It's all right, not so great, but he decides, I'm going to get better at it. And he spends a year, I think Jay Bates is doing this, spends all of this time cutting dovetails every single day. And you better believe he's going to change over the course of a year cutting dovetails by hand. He's going to get better at them. He's going to get to the point where he can do them without even thinking about it, and they're going to look great. But that's change, right? That's dedicating yourself to something to change your ability in it. And that is equally as impressive as gathering skills, you know? Change can also just be focusing on something and getting better at it, or getting deeper into it, or a better understanding of how it works, or, you know, whatever. I encourage people to change, no matter what the thing is you want to do. Anyway, got anything else on this? Change?
I'm going to change forward, backwards, upside down, sideways. It's going to keep changing.
Yeah, I think everybody can expect all three of us to change constantly.
I'm going to stop using fast forward.
You do an entire video
Slow-mo.
in reverse.
In slow-mo
Real-time reverse.
And at the very last frame of it, which would be the very first frame, say, I've changed. There you go. Boom. Speaking of, okay, that was a good segue. The new episode of No Dumb Questions, this is not my thing for this week, but the podcast that we've talked about in the past, No Dumb Questions, they had a guy on, their first guest this week, and you can tell him a word and he can say it backwards, like that.
Wait, was it David Fura?
It's, I can't remember what his name is.
Because my friend David Fura.
Crazy, though.
My friend David Fura speaks backwards. He's actually a friend of mine. I know him from the toy business. And he's been on every TV show in the world. Look up David Fura. He lives in L.A. and he speaks backwards at the drop of a hat. Me and my brother would always tell him when we first met him 25 years ago, we would always tell him dirty words and everything. You know, he grew up doing that, but we would make him say stuff in reverse. If you record him and you could have the ability to reverse it, he would actually, it would make sense.
Yeah, that's what this guy was doing on the podcast. He had his phone, and he would say something and then play it backwards, you know, to play it back. And they did all these tests on how many words, how many syllables he could get and stuff. Anyway, cool episode. Go listen to it. All right, we want to do some Twitter questions, or we want to wrap it up?
Let's do a couple Twitter questions.
One good one?
Yeah.
Two good ones.
Okay. Here's this is from Carl Recker. How has the podcast affected the three of you? Channel growth, approach, inspiration. Anybody want to take that?
I'll go first.
Go for it.
Whereas I would have these mental conversations alone in my head and argue, and then slowly it would just fade away and I'd forget about them. Now I have a chance to talk about them here with you guys, and maybe more people can benefit from them. So it's changing the way that I kind of make mental notes throughout the week of what I want to remember to talk about. Being able to say, change is a good thing because I'm getting to live out my fantasies that I never in a million years thought I'd get a chance to use this machine or own one of those or get my hands on that. And then being able to, changing it for the visual of the YouTube and then changing here, constantly needing input to be able to put output. So you need input. So constantly talking and remembering things to discuss and try and keep it fresh. It's like being a teacher. You want to keep the attention of your students and making sure that they're getting something out of what you're giving them. So, and in the process, I'm learning as much as whoever seems to learn from me.
Well, for me, it gives me a chance to interact with a couple other people and get some feedback or maybe brainstorm where I normally don't get to do that because I work by myself. And the podcast brings a little bit more structure into my life. So I know on Mondays we're doing this, and then Thursday I'm editing the podcast, and Friday, we promote the podcast, and that's what it does for me.
Yeah, I think that's a big part of it too. Like our lives and our schedules can be so chaotic because we're just like trying to do so much stuff. It is kind of interesting to have, like, at the beginning of the week, especially, to have like a marked, here's a thing we have to do, Mm-hmm. I think that's been good. Another big thing for me that I think has been good is it's getting tougher and tougher to come up with stuff to talk about from a, like, let's think of a topic. I think when we just like hang out and we talk and stuff, that's easy because we're friends and we have tons of stuff to talk about. But if we try to come up with a topic, that's getting harder and harder to do. But I think it's also a pretty good exercise because I think it's forced us to, like, all the low-hanging fruit we got out of the way pretty early, how we got started, we talked about cameras, we talked about all that stuff. and that's all out of the way, and we revisit some of that sometimes, but we also like will go like, what's something like that's important? Like last week you mentioned mental health. Like that's a thing that was on your mind, something you cared about and you wanted to figure out how to talk about. And so I think it's interesting that we have this thing where we're like trying to come up with topic content, you know, that it's kind of forcing us to brainstorm in different ways. Stuff that wouldn't make necessarily, you know, a great build video or something. But
on the subject of mental health, I had a few people reach out to me and share their story with me, which was amazing to hear some of these stories. And I still don't know how to approach the subject here on this podcast. And maybe it can be an episode in the future, but I think in the immediate future for me, I'm going to bring on a local expert on my YouTube channel, and where I can have a conversation with that person, maybe have some people submit questions, and this person can speak as an expert on the subject, and I don't offend anybody or approach something the wrong way. So
yeah, that's cool.
Smart.
One of the people that reached out to us was my friend Adam, who's a counselor, and he lives in Atlanta. Hey, Adam, if you're listening. Yeah, so if we ever did want to do something on the podcast, he was totally up for jumping on with us as well. So,
okay. Yeah.
Keep that as an option. Cool. What have you guys been watching? Listening to?
All right. I recently came across this channel. It's been shared all over on Facebook, and maybe you guys have seen it. The channel's called The Q. This guy makes I'm going to put a link in the show notes here, but the guy makes all these weird contraptions, and he'll use these needles as hydraulics.
Oh, hypodermic needle. Yeah, the hypodermic balls.
Yeah, it's absolutely
syringes.
amazing. Syringes, yes. And so he makes this machine that like picks up a Coca-Cola can and flips it upside down, all using these syringes. Yeah, it's amazing.
Whoa. I have not seen this.
It's so cool.
Oh, yeah, it was all over Facebook this week. A few people sent it to me. It's so cool. So this week I kind of got drunk on the All Me channel, and everybody seems to know this. Like I said, it's a little outside of like our maker wheelhouse because these guys are just like strictly blacksmithing stuff. But check out the All Me channel, and you see the guys from Baltimore Knife and Sword. Each week they get challenged to make something, and they make crazy stuff with beautiful antique equipment. Some of the machines they have are over 100 years old, and they're still operating. Power hammers, all kinds of cool stuff. And since I mentioned Ellen in the beginning of the show, Ellen is the girl whose video I just liked. She was there. She wasn't working though. She was just hanging out. They obviously have like a big social circle. There's a big circle. I met the coolest guy. He's going to be in my vlog this week. I met a guy named Wally Yater, and he's 80 years old. He's an old blacksmith, and he's got the greatest perspective. I felt like I was talking to a 30-year-old in the body of an 80-year-old. So you'll see some stuff. So I met some really cool people, and Ellen was one of the people I met. Ellen Durkan, DURKAN.com. She has a YouTube channel, which you could find through her website. And it's, there's not enough women in the maker community, like our favorite girls that work with us. And this girl doesn't have a big YouTube channel, but her work is incredible. She combines fashion with blacksmithing. And if you wonder how that works, you got to go take a look.
Interesting. Somebody brought up recently that we should, I think when we were asking for topics, somebody asked about how to get women into the maker community more. That's something I'm super curious about, but I don't know that I'm qualified to answer that as a man.
I'm still pushing Taylor. I mean, I'm going to show...
You know what I mean?
I want to show Taylor this website. I think she'll be inspired by this young girl's work. It's incredible.
So anyway, I just say that to like throw out to people. I think that's a fantastic topic. I kind of feel like three dudes talking about that might be a little underrepresentative. And there are a lot of women that are doing really awesome stuff. A lot of woodworking women, there's a lot of metalworking women. I've seen a lot more on Instagram. It seems to be that a lot of the women woodworkers I've seen have a bigger Instagram presence than YouTube. I don't know if maybe that's just my observation of it, but so if that's something you're looking for, if you're a woman and you're looking for inspiration or whatever, look around on Instagram. I think there's a bigger community there for it, and maybe we can get some communities mixed up. But okay, so for me, I have not been watching YouTube lately because I just haven't been here and haven't had time. But I have been watching a new TV show. And actually, it's not a new TV show. It's new to me. The Goldbergs. You ever heard of the Goldbergs?
I'm familiar with it, but I haven't watched it.
Okay, so it's like a couple people have told me I should watch it over the years because it's like set in the 80s, and the main character kid in it is like 13 or 14. And so he's into all the nerdy stuff that I'm still like from the 80s. So, super into Star Wars and G.I. Joe and Transformers and all the stuff that I grew up with and everything. But it's a really funny kind of family sitcom, but there's just tons and tons of 80s reference, like lots of 80s music in it, lots of movie reference stuff that they bring in. It's a really funny show, and they're like 3 or 4 seasons in, but I can highly recommend it. It's a good show. I guess that's it, unless you guys got anything else. I'm going to thank our Patreon supporters. Make, Build, Modify, and Luis Gonzalez are our top supporters over there. And we got to come up with a new way to thank Patreon people. We've been doing the same spiel for like 113 episodes. So we need a new way to thank them. Thank you guys.
We'll write a song for them every week. A new song.
Okay, that's Jimmy's job. He called it.
You guys are the musicians.
Yeah, but we do really appreciate the support from everybody over there.
Thank you, guys.
Cool. Well, guess that's it, unless you guys got anything else.
I think we're good.
That's it. I don't love being the host. I do love a lot of things, but I don't love being the host. But
Jimmy, you don't like change?
No, not this kind of change. I'm nervous. I'm afraid I was going to drop the ball. Bob, you're so good at it. You're like a radio announcer, Bob. It's almost like you have your own podcast.
It's almost like that.
All right.
Well, we'll be back next week, and Jimmy will do the intro again, and he'll get better at it.
That's right. That's how change happens. Practice.
That's right. Practice.
Thanks, guys.
See you guys next week.